Hello, builders, and welcome to Building SaaS on AWS, the AWS SaaS Factory show for builders of SaaS here on Twitch. My name is Anthony McClure, and I am a solutions architect with the AWS SaaS Factory and your host for the show. If you are currently a builder of software as a service solutions, or even just getting started and learning how to design, build, deploy, and operate SaaS or applications in multi-tenant environments, then this is the show for you. In every episode, we strive to bring you subject matter experts that can dive deep into the many and varied tasks and actions related to building SaaS on AWS. On today's show, we actually have a little bit of a special show for you as we are right around the corner from the biggest and most important event for AWS of the year, and that is reInvent, taking place in the first week of December 2024. And the AWS SaaS Factory will be there in droves. We have a lot of different sessions that we're going to be showing and having there at reInvent, including yours truly. And to help us to prepare for that and give a little bit of a preview about what we're going to be showing and talking about at reInvent, I am inviting today several other AWS SaaS Factory solutions architects to go through all of the different sessions that we're looking forward to this year. But before I bring in our guests and before we jump into things, I would like to welcome everybody that is joining us live today on Twitch. If you are here with us, please jump into the comments section. Let us know who you are, where you're from. Are you going to reInvent or not? Are you looking forward to reInvent? We'd love to hear about it and from you. And remember that as we're going through today's show, if you have any questions for myself or our guest, please feel free to put those in chat as well. And while you're there, make sure and hit that follow button if you like this kind of content and want to see AWS bring more like this to you. If you're joining us today by watching this video on demand after we've gone live, and you really should join us live, please see, if you're on YouTube seeing this, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can see any of this other great content that we're bringing to you. And you can always find us there on the Building SaaS on AWS channel. So without further ado, why don't we go ahead and jump into today's content. So to assist us, I'm going to bring on a familiar face, Mr. Bill Tarr. How are you doing, Bill? Bill, of course, is our moderator, for the show. Bill, why don't you introduce yourself and hey, tell our audience a little bit about the SaaS Factory.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'll take a run at that. I feel like I've introduced the program once or twice. So it's good to see you again, Anthony. It's good to actually be on with so many members of the team today. This is pretty exciting. I don't think there's 4 of us in one place all that often. So like this is kind of nice. I'm going to enjoy this. So hey, everybody. Hopefully you recognize my name from the moderator chat if you've been on the show before. I'm here every 2 weeks with Anthony talking about SaaS and chatting with you all in the background. I see some people saying hi in the background there on the chat already. If you haven't said hi already, reach out, say hello, tell us where you're dialing in from, like Anthony said. But yeah, I work for a team called the AWS SaaS Factory, as does Anthony and the 2 next people we're going to introduce. Our team helps customers and partners with AWS to build excellent SaaS solutions on AWS, not just from the beginnings of thinking about how you can build and what you can build, but getting into the real depths of how you optimize a business for SaaS, providing business expertise. And from the technical side, where all of us are represented today, because all of us are solutions architects of AWS, from the technical side of how you really build an outstanding SaaS solution and all of the different ways you can use AWS services, partner solutions, and to leverage our partners, our SI partners, like our SaaS competency partners, to build better solutions on AWS. So that's a mouthful. It's a lot of different stuff, but our team's pretty diverse and we do a lot of stuff. So Anthony, I'll kick it back to you to introduce our other 2 friends here.
Thanks, Bill. Really appreciate it. So yeah, let's bring on our other 2 guests. Both are veterans of the show. With us today, we have Anubhav Sharma and Ranjith Raman. Welcome to the show, both of you. Anubhav, it's been a little bit, I think, since you've been on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself next?
Yes, thanks, Anthony and Bill, for having us, right? So I'm also part of the same team as Bill and Anthony, SaaS Factory, and I'm one of the solutions architect. it's been 5 years in this team, and it's been fun helping customers and partners build and architect SaaS solutions on AWS. And one of the big thing that our team do is build some new content and exciting sessions for reInvent. And obviously we all are part of that journey, right? So today we're going to talk about some of those exciting stuff that we're building for reInvent this year.
Awesome. Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much,
Yeah.
Anubhav. Yeah. And Ranjith, welcome to the show as well. Everybody, and give Ranjith a little bit of a break today. He's not feeling too well. But Ranjith, you've been on the show several times already this year even, so welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Anthony. So I was joking a little bit yesterday. Like every time it's time for the show, I get sick. I don't know. I mean, it's sort of a strange coincidence. But hopefully I don't screw this up. Hey, everyone. Ranjith Raman. I'm one of the solutions architects within AWS SaaS Factory. Been with the team for 5 years, or a little over 5 years, and also at AWS for 5 years. So really looking forward to this show. And again, thanks, Bill and Anthony, for having us.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here and for being here when you're not feeling all that great. I know that can be tough. Welcome to the show, everybody. So let's go ahead and dive into some sessions and things that we're going to be talking about at reInvent this year. Bill has graciously put together this little slide deck talking about all of the different sessions. We've tried to organize them together into categories as well. And so it looks like the first category that we have up here is SaaS control plane.
Yeah, I'll get us kicked off on this because this is something I think we're already excited about. All of us are a little excited about. We've had a couple sessions this year already talking about the SaaS Builder Toolkit, right? Mm-hmm. So I think anyone who's watched the show a little bit already is familiar with this concept. If you haven't seen those episodes, definitely go back and check them out. Not now, in about an hour, go check those out. We had some, we've talked about with Mosif, who's built a plugin for SBT, SaaS Builder Toolkit. And we've talked about how we built the SaaS Builder Toolkit, but I think we're still getting the word out. This is a new initiative this year. It's exciting. All four of us have been with SaaS Factory 3+ years. Anubhav, I want to say you've got the longest tenure here by a few days over Ranjith.
2 weeks.
About 2 weeks. That matters in AWS. That's like dog years. That's like 2 years or so, right? So honestly, like this is one of the more exciting developments for me this year. If you haven't seen it, the whole time we've been here, we've been talking with customers over and over again about building SaaS control planes. And it was always a very bespoke journey. Like, oh, yeah, you're going to need onboarding. You're going to need to manage identity for your control plane. You're going to need to do DevOps, talking about the same things over and over again, giving them examples of how to do them. But it was still very much a journey that they were all going through on their own. This is really the first attempt our team has put together to build a reference architecture, if you want to call it that, that shows off how to build a SaaS control plane. And it's, I mean, I'll just to put my own sort of spin on this in terms of what I see as the most valuable. It's a pluggable platform. We can take partner solutions like Stripe, for example, for billing, and plug them into this platform. And this sort of eliminates one of the problems we've seen across all control planes, which is it has to be very opinionated. If you're building one for yourself, you tend to, like everything else, build to your specific use case instead of building for all of the use cases that might come downstream. So I think it's kind of exciting, right? It's exciting to see these things. It's interesting to see the plugins that are being built. And it's very interesting now that I've talked to a few customers about SBT to see how it's accelerating their journey. So I'm kind of excited that we'll have a workshop here. This will be hands-on. And this will be a theme, by the way. And Anubhav, I'm going to kick it to you to talk. I mean, if you want to talk for a second about the workshops we have this year, just in general, I feel like this, Anubhav and Ranjith in particular, everybody have just been killing it in terms of building workshops. There's going to be a ton of cool workshop content starting with this one. So Anubhav, let me kick it to you to talk about a little bit too here.
Yeah, no, again, so as Bill, you mentioned, this control plane is a common challenge that every SaaS provider has to solve, right? And especially when they are building multiple SaaS solutions or multiple products, it becomes more and more challenging. So specifically, this SBT is a developer toolkit that helps solve that challenge in a repeatable fashion, right? And as you mentioned, the workshop, yes, I mean, we are building a hands-on workshop. Customers love doing hands-on stuff, right? So that's the point of building the workshop. And along with this workshop, we have like 5 more workshops and 2 more builder sessions, by the way, which we are going to talk about as we go along. But just to give a quick preview, right? Obviously we have workshop on SBT, then we have workshop around how to build cell-based architectures. We have workshop around how do you operate your SaaS solutions. We have workshops around how do you test your SaaS solutions, and how do you calculate cost inside your SaaS solution. So I think we'll talk about more of those in more detail. But yes, SBT, which is like the core offering for a SaaS platform, right? Or the core building block, I should say, not really an offering because it's kind of hidden from the end customer, right? So that will be interesting for sure.
It provides those high level abstractions for customers, right? So the idea is like Bill and Anubhav said, like the customers, they don't have to start from scratch, right? So SBT provides that sort of this a set of building blocks and abstractions that customers or partners can use to build their SaaS control plane. Because during my conversation, I'm sure every single one of you here, building a control plane or a SaaS control plane, it's not an easy task, right? So there are a lot of considerations that goes around, how do you efficiently onboard, and how do you set up billing, and how do you set up identity, right? So SBT makes that the whole boilerplate sort of logic that goes behind building a control plane. SBT does a lot of the heavy lifting for that. So that's the idea. I'll stop
Yeah,
there.
no, I would totally agree with everything that's been said. But yeah, especially what Ranjith is getting to there. Just like AWS cloud, right? One of the key benefits of the cloud and all the different services that we offer is that we try to eliminate or remove a lot of that undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? That everybody has to do. And SBT, and for that matter, the reference solutions that are kind of built on the same concepts of SBT, really help you to see and understand or provide a basis to do that heavy lifting for you. Not to say that it's going to be exactly what you need, right, for your production applications, but it gets you a good and really good starting place that is following all of our best practices, or what we're recommending to our partners and customers at the SaaS Factory as far as SaaS architecture is concerned. So definitely check out SBT, and certainly if you're going to be at reInvent, be sure to look at those sessions. So we'll move on to our next topic here. Our next category. Well, of course, very, very popular topic. Maybe folks are getting just a little burned out at this point, but it's so important, right? And that is Gen AI and SaaS. We have a couple of different sessions related to this topic. We have a breakout session and, again, a workshop. I think you're going to be seeing a very similar format here as we go through some of these various topics. So we've got this breakout here: generative AI meets multi-tenant solution, right? Or multi-tenant applications. And it's really important for us to think about that, right? To dive in and understand this Gen AI thing, and these offerings like Bedrock and knowledge bases and the pieces that go with that. But when you're in a multi-tenant SaaS application, there's more that you have to consider, right? How do you keep, again, the tenants isolated from each other? How do you protect data? So, what do we have to say about these, folks?
I think I have been working closely with the team who has been building this. Again, I'm not really building it, but I was just kind of involved in the in kind of get to experience what they are actually up to. And this is like, in my opinion, so as we all know, right, Gen AI is kind of changing the way the companies are doing business, right? Obviously, there's a lot to come in the future, and as all these ISVs are kind of incorporating Bedrock into their multi-tenant SaaS solutions, obviously the challenge of how do you isolate tenants, how do you prevent a noisy neighbor, because obviously with any service, Bedrock also have certain account level limits to deal with, right? So how do you take those limits into consideration? How do you throttle tenants? And more importantly, how do you make sure that the cost is understood across these tenants, right? Because obviously, as so you the idea is to obviously refine your pricing model as well, the way you go, and cost of running a tenant is basically the cogs that goes into that pricing model as well, right? So some of these considerations are playing a big role. Obviously, that is what you will see in the workshop. In the breakout also, you will see like a lot of concepts being hashed out, right, in general, and a lot of features of Bedrock that will help you build your multi-tenant SaaS application, right, using knowledge bases, etc., right? So I think this is going to be like a great session, in my opinion, for people who are trying to incorporate Bedrock in their multi-tenant SaaS applications.
Yeah.
Any
I'll
other
just
thoughts?
I'll just chime in. Like, people probably saw us talk about multi-tenant Gen AI on our show 2 months ago, but that might as well have been 2 years ago in Gen AI terms, right? Things are changing so rapidly in Gen AI. Like, all of the conversations around what we're doing with knowledge bases, about how agents work in Gen AI, especially in terms of Bedrock, they're just changing incredibly rapidly. Like, if you're following all the back channels in AWS, the busiest channels by far and away are the ones talking about Bedrock. And it's for a good reason, right? Like, a lot of our customers are asking for things around Bedrock, or are talking about how they can use Bedrock. And Anubhav, the one thing you said that immediately jumped out at me is cost. Like, it's not inexpensive to use Gen AI. It's as simple as that. It's going to be GPU units, GPU-based instances behind them sometimes. It costs a fair amount of money, right? So in terms of how we think about SaaS and how you could potentially use multi-tenancy to help to manage costs, I think that's an important conversation around Gen AI. And I'm, knowing Ujwal and Mehran and some of the other people who are involved in those conversations, it's going to be an important part of what we hear this year.
I can see a question out there.
Yeah, we got a question from the from chat here, asking, are these topics that we're talking about today, and I think maybe specifically Gen AI, but are we going to cover also metering, billing, tenant metrics related for Bedrock?
Yeah, so yes, the short answer is yes. Yes, the workshop does cover it. So typically the way Bedrock pricing works, if I'm not wrong, is based upon the tokens, right? So the team has figured out a way how to capture the input and output tokens. And that gives them a fair bit of idea around the tenant usage, and then how do you kind of go back to the cost and usage report and try to break that usage, break that cost by usage, right? So all of that is actually a dedicated lab in this workshop. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Very important to bring up. And yeah, I would agree with what Bill was saying as well, right? I think cost is really one of the biggest concerns that people have around Gen AI in general, and maybe even more specifically with SaaS. So it's great to see that those questions are at least being addressed in these workshops as well.
One final thing on that, on this whole topic, right? So, I have seen a lot of partners and customers build like generative AI solutions, like chatbots or search solutions, or solutions that create new content, right? But the focus here is like when you throw in SaaS, like it adds a new wrinkle to this whole equation of generative AI, right? So there is like, how do you onboard customers in a way that they get, do they get their own data store or vector store? Like there is like isolation aspects, security aspects, cost aspects, right? So I think that's going to be the key here, right? Like, how do you build a multi-tenant SaaS generative AI solution is going to be the key.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay, so what's next on the list here, Bill?
Oh, we got another question though, real quick.
Oh, we got one.
Want to hit
sorry,
that? Yeah,
see that.
Bedrock costs, oddly enough, seem to have triggered a lot of questions for some reason. I don't know why.
I wonder why. Yeah, so SaaS Hatari. That's hard to say.
SaaS Hatari. That's it. It's SaaS Hatari.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, why is Bedrock cost any different from compute, database, etc.? Right, just typical costs that we normally go through. Interesting question. Anybody want to jump on that one?
I mean, obviously, like the service teams look at the different metrics, right? And they talk to customers around what pricing makes sense. Obviously, there's a lot of research that happens behind the scenes coming with the pricing model, and that's usually based upon what makes sense for the customer. So in this case, again, you have, I think, a usage-based model. Also, you can do some provisioned capacity, right, for Bedrock, if I'm not wrong. Although I haven't really looked very closely into the pricing recently, might have changed, as you say, Bill. Keeps changing things. Things keep changing in this world so fast.
Yeah.
But again, with that pricing model, you can take the advantage of pay as you go, basically.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think one of the challenges too, and then Ranjith, I'm sorry, but one of the challenges too that Bedrock has, or Gen AI in general, let's say, is that the pricing is not just based on the compute that's being utilized, right? It's not something that you can easily just you'll pay a single price for, and that's you can expect from it. So much of the pricing is based on also the particular foundation model that is being chosen for the solution, and the pricing of that model, because the models themselves are priced based on the tokenization, right, or the tokens or the elements of the queries that are being passed into the actual Bedrock or into Bedrock and then actually to the model. And understanding the cost of that tokenization is difficult because it's not the same for every model either. So there's a lot of custom parts of thinking about the cost that comes with a Gen AI solution that doesn't come along with maybe just compute or database, that you can really have a more firm idea of how much individual things cost. Ranjith, you had a thought there too?
That is exactly what I was going to say. That's the whole beauty of Bedrock, right? So the customers are not working with just one model, right? So there is a whole array of models, that they can pick and choose from, right? So I think you covered it pretty well, Anthony.
Yeah,
so
agreed.
There's Bedrock provides that flexibility for customers,
right?
So
just
think, sorry, go ahead,
taking
Bill.
it off, the cost is important to a lot of people, but the functionality that you're getting from Bedrock, how easy it makes it, how accessible it makes Gen AI, is really the important piece of Gen AI for AWS. I think anyone who's starting to play with it probably already sees the value in having accessibility to so many models, being able to do tokenization so simply, having vector databases at your fingertips, and being able to use OpenSearch to get started with basically no overhead. You can start using all these Gen AI models today. It's really powerful. So I'd probably focus on some of the value that you're seeing out of Gen AI. And over time, we already saw a comment in there that costs have dropped dramatically. That's going to continue to happen, and the functionality is going to keep getting better and better. I love the evolution of the multi-tenancy story within Bedrock. Of the services we've built, this is probably the fastest I've seen multi-tenancy really become a first-class concept in a service.
Agreed.
So I think we're going to continue to see that evolve. But yeah, let's jump off this because we'll turn it into another Gen AI session if we don't. So I'm going to flip the page here, or we'll have yet another 100% Gen AI session onto this next topic.
So yeah, cell-based SaaS architecture, cell-based architecture in general has become a pretty hot topic throughout 2024. And of course, anytime there is a newer or an updated architecture that is catching fire, we want to make sure that we're addressing that from a SaaS perspective, from a multi-tenancy perspective as well. And multi-tenancy and cell-based architecture go together extremely well, right? They fit together. Anubhav, I know you have some experience in this realm too, right?
Yeah, no, I think this topic is definitely near and dear to my heart as of now, because I'm involved in building the workshop at which we are going to present at reInvent. I think in general, as ISVs and SaaS providers are scaling, right? They do realize that in order to reduce blast radius, to accommodate things like account limits and noise neighbor prevention, and to add more resiliency to their architecture, it's sometimes necessary to have small pods or cells of tenants, right? You can think of this as, as I mentioned, a way to improve your SLAs, improve your security posture, and also maybe a way to tier, implement some sort of tiering strategy, right? So you can possibly have separate and and by the definition of cell, and if you have looked at some of the articles in the builder library from Amazon, right? Amazon AWS itself implements cell-based architecture to improve their own resiliency posture, right? And we have different regions, and the way deployment happens across different regions, right? So similar concept we are trying to implement here, where you can have cells of tenants, and each cell is independent of each other, can scale independently, can be deployed in a separate account if you want to, and also you can deploy across cells in waves, right? So as an example, you have, let's say, cell 1, which is, let's say, your basic tier. You want to first deploy your release there, experiment and see what's going on, and then move that release to the other other cells. So that's again one of the concepts. Obviously, you also need to consider your cell health. So observability is a big thing that you need to consider. So net all these concepts and much more, which I might have forgotten, are part of these sessions. And by the way, just one. Sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, it might actually even be good if you can just give a quick definition of even what cell-based architecture is, Anubhav, if you don't mind. There perhaps could be those in the audience that aren't even familiar with this type of architecture.
Yeah, as I mentioned, right, and I think the cell comes from the concept of how ships were built, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yep.
And I vaguely remember, reading about this. Typically, when a ship is built, the just to avoid sinking the ship faster, they have like compartments so let's say there is a breakage in one compartment, the water only fills up in that compartment, right? So I think the concept came from there. So the idea is that if one cell or one deployment fails, it does not affect others, right? So basically, the definition of cell is like just have different parts or different units of deployments. You can think them of like maybe separate deployments in separate AWS accounts or different regions, just to support that, right? So that's the idea. Oh, thank you so much.
I found the image.
Yeah, great. That's what I remember, from what I have read before. Yeah, I think it's basically how do you isolate, as I mentioned, reduce the blast radius. How do you isolate cells so that they are not affected from the other cells, right? But then the one thing which I was about to mention, Anthony, is that what's really important is like how do you give that unified experience to your customers, right? So the customers itself may not know how many cells you're running. So there has to be some sort of routing mechanism to begin with, right? And that's the last session that you saw in that PowerPoint deck, which Bill was presenting, like how you can implement the routing strategy. So there has to be a concept of cell routing, which basically encapsulates the underlying complexity, right, of different VPCs or accounts or different clusters, right? Howsoever you want to kind of isolate your cells with, right? There are different ways you can do that. So the routing becomes important, and how do you get the tenant context? How do you route to the respective cell in which the tenant lives, right? I think those are some of the important things that you need to consider, along with everything else. So that's basically, I think these sessions will cover in much more detail.
Yeah.
So just for these sessions too, you notice that this particular category has a new session type that we haven't talked about yet. So we've talked about breakouts, we talked about workshops. This also has a chalk talk in it, and I think that's what you were just referring to, is that last session there, right, Anubhav, is a chalk talk. Chalk talks are a little bit different, and if you've gone to them, I highly encourage you to do so, because not only will you get a short presentation about the concept, but the majority of the session is actually there for questions and answers. There's a whiteboard present that we can draw on and talk to. So if you want to go a little bit deeper with a solutions architect in this case, I highly recommend you going to those chalk talks. They are unique as far as the different kinds of sessions that we have at reInvent and other events.
Yeah.
So the final session there.
Go ahead.
Real quick. So that is a little bit different from the cell-based architecture. And I know we combine that into. So that's a little bit around. If you look at a typical SaaS application, so there's traffic coming into the application, right, or into the solution. So we call it the north-south traffic. Like it can go through like CloudFront or API gateway, and then through the load balancer, getting into your SaaS workloads, like it could be containers or Lambdas. So the Chalk Talk that's going to basically look at those strategies, right? So when traffic comes into the application, like what are some of the best practices and patterns and strategies that you can use, and not just north-south traffic, like it also relates to traffic that flows between microservices, the east-west traffic as well, right? So we'll be talking about that as well. And I think we'll also touch upon sort of related to the earlier conversation that we had around Gen AI or generative AI. A lot of customers, they like end customers of SaaS providers, they have data in their own environment, right? So they might have data in their own account, and now SaaS providers, they have a challenge of, okay, like how do we connect to the different customer accounts, right? So there's like options like private link and other options there. So I think we'll be touching on those aspects as well as part of that Chalk Talk. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, good. Thanks for bringing that up, Ranjith. For those of you that are joining us here as we're approaching the bottom of the hour, welcome. You are currently watching Building SaaS on AWS, and today we are talking about the AWS SaaS Factory and reInvent 2024, which is coming up in the first week of December here. We're talking about all the different sessions and topics that's for SaaS that the SaaS Factory is bringing this year. So the next category we're going to take a look at here is SaaS operations. Now, this is a really interesting topic as well. One maybe that doesn't get as much attention as our normal building SaaS is concerned. But hey, once it's up and running, we have to operate it, right? So what do we have going on here?
Yeah, I think I can start, I guess, maybe. Yeah, definitely. This is, I feel like based upon a brief survey that we did a couple of years ago, there were two things that came out very prominently. That customers really want to see how to operate SaaS solutions in an effective fashion. And then the second thing was, which we'll talk next maybe, is the cost visibility inside the SaaS solutions, right? So SaaS operations was something that and the idea was like, how do you automate your provisioning, onboarding, and how do you bring fairness in a multi-tenant workload by implementing some sort of throttling mechanism. So all those things which are not tenant isolation, which you have to do as part of a SaaS solution anyways, but all those operational aspects in terms of provisioning, deployments, observability, right? Like how do you look at those dashboards, and how do you even like test your multi-tenant workload, right? And again, then you go into the weeds of like how do you maintain the configurations of all these different tenants if you choose to deploy them in a different environment, in a silo model as an example, or in a hybrid model, right? I know the second Chalk Talk is we'll go a little bit into like how you can do this using a GitOps model, right? So it's an interesting topic which basically covers everything else than just the tenant isolation, right? Which is basically how do you operate your SaaS solution, how do you observe them, how do you test them, etc.
Yeah, I think we definitely get a lot of questions on DevOps related to SaaS, right? How do we do these deployments? What are the patterns of actually working with your SaaS solution, not only getting it up and running, but then adding tenants later on or making changes? So that Chalk Talk is definitely going to be an interesting topic around that. So if you're interested in DevOps, I highly encourage you to seek out that particular session. One other aspect of Chalk Talks that's a little bit unique is that those sessions are not recorded, right? So a lot of the other sessions that we do are recorded, at least the breakouts. And so you could review those in an offline sort of way. But Chalk Talks, you have to be there. So important.
Right. Yeah. And it's usually great conversations. Honestly, this is one of those topics that I expect there'd be great audience engagement, right? I mean, it's like Anubhav was saying, it like when we're talking to SaaS providers, we often work with them while they're building. Like it's typical, that's when you have the most questions. Hey, how do I do tenant isolation? How do I do identity? but you're going to spend a lot more time operating it than you are building it, right? Hopefully, if you do it right, you're going to be running this thing for years. What are the questions that come up about how you optimize that solution, how you keep it profitable, how you continue to evolve it so that the business has more control over the SaaS solution that they've built? How do they iterate over packaging? How can they go in and make changes to the system? How do they observe the current state of customers in that solution, right? How do they understand whether customers are ready to churn, what features customers are using and what they prefer? All of those conversations continue to happen in the fullness of time with SaaS. It doesn't end when you stop building it. It gets more intricate and more interesting, right? I mean, if you're watching any public SaaS solution like Salesforce right now, they're heavily iterating on their prices and starting to introduce more usage-based pricing. That's a major change to a SaaS platform that's been around for a decade now, right? And they're continuing to evolve it. That's what these conversations around operations are make it so special. Like Dave Roberts in particular, I think has done really good work, and he's been on here with us as well, and he's in our chat quite a lot. I don't know if he's here today, so say hi if you are, Dave. But he has done a really great job of building out new content in workshops and elsewhere, talking about how to operate your SaaS solution. So I think these would be pretty exciting if you're going to join a topic.
And just to quickly add on that, like the initial days of SaaS Factory, or the initial few years of SaaS Factory, like we didn't have a lot of content around operations, right? So a lot of our focus was on like, hey, like how do you design and build a SaaS solution using a variety of AWS services, right? So be it serverless or EKS, or we have something around ECS now, but it was really around that. But like Anubhav said, talking with partners and customers, we saw that okay, they have a SaaS solution now, and now they have to operate it. Like, what are some of the challenges that they're facing? And we heard things like, okay, noisy neighbor, like situations where one tenant is impacting other tenants. Like, how do they solve that or mitigate that? So we took that feedback and we said, okay, so we need to focus. This is an area that we need to focus a little bit more on. So that was the motivation to build a workshop and put some content together around this notion of SaaS operations. So.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So what do we got on deck next, Bill?
Ooh,
the
application
plane. Yeah. So we have a few different sessions here, 2 breakouts and a workshop related to the application plane. I think this is another one of those topics, right, where we certainly talk about it a lot, right?
Yeah.
But the majority of our focus is usually more on the control plane side of things, where we're actually managing the SaaS solution. But here, yeah, we have some topics on the application plane. Who'd like to speak to this one?
Yeah. I mean, I could take the first one. So, I mean, you're right, Anthony. And this is somewhat related to my earlier comment, right? So over the years, SaaS Factory, we have built solutions, and we have provided best practices around, okay, how do you onboard a tenant, set up identity, and how do you do billing? Like a lot of focus on the control plane layer, a lot of focus on the compute services like serverless or EKS or ECS. We have had some good blogs written around data strategies. Like, in fact, one of the first blogs I remember was Anubhav's around DynamoDB, right? So how do you solve for like hotkey partitions and things like that? And then Michael Beardsley, one of our SaaS Factory members, like he wrote a great blog around row-level security, or implementing row-level security with Postgres. And Dave Roberts, he has done some work. So we have talked about data, but not in a reInvent setting. Like, I don't think we have ever had a dedicated session around data and storage strategies at reInvent. So this is the first time. So we are attempting that. So basically, take all the best practices and that we have talked about and present it here at reInvent. And this particular session, I think we'll have a lot of emphasis around RDS and Aurora, especially. We'll talk about like scaling patterns, sharding, partitioning your workload, cost management is going to be a heavy focus as well. So Yeah, so let's see how that goes and the feedback that we get there.
I think the one that I'm the most interested in here is the workshop that's been added for cost per tenant, right? I mean, cost per tenant is a huge topic. It comes up with nearly every conversation that I have with customers. So that workshop going in depth on elements and setting up how to actually start capturing the metrics for cost per tenant, I think is a really exciting topic. Any other thoughts there?
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, right, as I was mentioning, Anthony, like that was one of the hot topic. I think I talk to like a customer every 2 weeks on this topic now. It's been like that challenging. And just to take a step back, right? I mean, let's say you're building a SaaS solution and you have like each tenant deployed in a separate VPC or separate account. You can easily tag using cost allocation tags, right? You can just put cost allocation tags to any resources for those tenants, right? And that will show up in your cost and usage report, in your all the dashboards. And that's not even the challenge you're trying to solve here, right? The challenge is when you kind of start sharing resources across these tenants, right? So when you, let's say as an example, you have shared set of Lambda functions or a shared set of RDS as an example, maybe an S3 bucket. Like, what are some of the strategies you can use to get to that fine-grained usage and cost, right? So obviously it all starts with like capturing the usage using either application level or infrastructure level metrics. So this workshop kind of goes a little deep into how do you capture and kind of augment your microservices to emit those metrics. And then we are also leveraging Kudos, which is basically cost and usage dashboard. And with the help of Kudos, when you deploy Kudos, you get access to your Tarr report. Everything is kind of automated for you. You basically then have access to all those different views, which can help you visualize the cost and usage report using Athena. And then it also gives us a way to join the usage and cost to get to that cost per tenant. So we will talk about 3 different architectures in this workshop, actually, and show you different variations of how you can do it.
Excellent. Thanks. All right. Let's go ahead and jump to the next topic.
There was one more there.
I think, yeah, there's one more.
Did we miss one?
The federated identity.
Oh, yes, federated
I mean,
identity. Yeah. Yes. So federated identity. Ranjith, why don't you give first just a definition of what that even is?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times, SaaS providers, they have customers that have their own, identity systems, right? So a lot of customers, like we see,
like Active Directory or something.
Like Active Directory is it's a great
LDAP.
example, right? And LDAP and customers, they tell SaaS providers that, hey, we want to use our identity system to authenticate our users, right? And SaaS providers need to provide a seamless way of doing that. So this particular session is going to look into the patterns and strategies on how to implement that particular. And Amazon Cognito provides a really great way to enable or establish federated identity using the whole concept of identity pools. So I'm sure that's one of the services or patterns that we'll be covering as part of this session. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Just
Bill, yeah.
I'll just chime in on this because Anthony, you and I literally talked about this with a customer yesterday, right? We were just talking about this. Customers often come as people are building SaaS. They often start with this conversation like, hey, my customers are telling me they're using Okta and they're telling me that they're using Active Directory. I don't know how to implement all of these different customer solutions. The answer is you don't, right? You implement a specific identity provider, whether that's Auth0, whether that's Amazon Cognito. These solutions all have federation built into them, either through SAML or OIDC, and you have options to how you connect to those customer data stores, right? So you don't have to go and figure out how the customers did all of their things. These standards have been out there for quite some time, right? There's nothing particularly new about what's going on there. So it's going to be a great session. It's not something I don't know if I've ever seen a session from us on this topic. It's a really strong topic. So anyway, let's keep going. I think we've got like 4 or 5 more sessions.
Yeah, and we're starting to run low on time. So let's
exactly.
Let's see if we can get through.
Let's
here.
go.
So the next section is new on SaaS and new to SaaS. we always need to go back to the beginning, right? We need to understand, of course, that new folks are coming into the market all the time. New people are being exposed to SaaS. So we do have some sessions here, builder session, a couple of chalk talks about, starting out with SaaS. I especially like the
builder
title
session.
of the builder session.
Zero to SaaS.
Do you wanna- yeah.
Go ahead, Ranjith.
No, I was just saying, like, do you want to talk about what a builder session is? Like, if there are folks that
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So, anybody want to take that one on?
Yeah,
not quite a workshop, right?
Builder sessions are like a 1 hour experience, right? Ranjith, why don't you go? I think you just did last year one. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a little bit of a different experience than a workshop. So workshops are typically like 2 hours. Like there is a large room of customers and attendees, and there'll be support folks from AWS. But builder session, it's 1 hour. There'll be limited number of attendees, and they'll be seated in a table, right? And each section or each table would have a dedicated AWS personnel or support helping them or basically helping them navigate the workshop or the session. So it's a little bit more like if there is an issue, like there is a person that's standing next to you to help out, right? So that's basically the format of a builder session. Yeah.
So in
this particular one, Anubhav,
yeah.
Zero to SaaS, I think Anubhav, you're sort of involved in this one a little bit.
Yeah, I just was involved initially, but the team who's building is doing a great job in terms of how to take a very basic web application and how to add SaaS components to it, right? It's as simple as that. How do you add like identity, tenant isolation, and like how do you basically just make sure that you emit those metrics as well as part of the SaaS application, right? So very basic. I think 1 hour, this will be really fun experience for you to take your existing zero SaaS application to a SaaSified version. And I also yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, just quickly, I mean, to make it easier, I believe the team is leveraging SBT to build the control plane to show how easy it is to drop in a control plane, right, and start building on top of that, right?
Yep.
So
Right.
I know that will be a cool experience for
Yep.
For the attendees there. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So next, then we have here again a couple of chalk talks. One about migration and modernization. I think this is pretty common, right? Either an existing SaaS that is moving from outside of AWS to AWS, or migration from, say, a single tenant application to multi-tenant applications. This chalk talk will be talking about strategies for doing so. And the realities that you have to take into account when doing this kind of migration, mapping to services, things of that nature that need to take place. And then we also have another chalk talk here talking about next generation SaaS tenant isolation strategies. Anybody have any experience in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I can briefly talk about that. So basically, obviously you can isolate tenants using accounts and VPCs, but what we have seen is that when you go past a certain scale, that becomes really challenging for SaaS providers to scale. So one of the best practices that we recommend is to share resources. And when you share resources across tenants, that becomes more challenging, right? So you need some sort of runtime, IAM-based isolation. So without going into too much details, I would say, stay tuned for this session where you will learn like some of those strategies or how to use various AWS services, including AVP, to implement some of those fine-grained authentication and authorization.
Right. Amazon verified permissions. There it is.
That's right, AVP. Yep.
Yep. All right.
All right. So let's go into speed dating mode here for the last few that we have to get in. So we got Kubernetes. I told you we had a lot of sessions this year. Kubernetes, obviously a great compute platform for building out SaaS, and we have a couple of different sessions here, a chalk talk, as well as a workshop. And Ranjith, I know this is your kind of your baby when it comes to Kubernetes and SaaS. Any thoughts on these?
Yeah, absolutely. So this one, the first one, the optimizing multi-tenant EKS SaaS architectures. So it's so in the previous years at reInvent, we have focused a lot on the design and build aspects of how you build a SaaS solution or an architecture on top of EKS, on top of Amazon Elastic Kubernetes Servers, right? And talking with customers, they have already done that. Now, what the next step is really like things like scaling and performance and node consolidation. So there's a tool called Carpenter. I'm sure a lot of folks would have heard that or are familiar with. So it's a project that came out of AWS, which is a scaling solution. You can call it a scaling solution. It helps with, but it does more than like managing scaling, right? So it does help with like things like node consolidation, and it helps with cost management as well. So Carpenter, we're going to focus on Carpenter as part of this session pretty heavily. Then management and monitoring and observability is a big aspect when you're looking to optimizing your EKS SaaS environment. So things like services like Prometheus and Grafana. So we'll be covering that. So it's really in the efficiency phase, right? Sort of like you have an architecture that you have built, designed, and built. Now, how do you make sure it's optimized for scale and how do you implement like good observability practices as part of this environment? So that's where the majority of the focus is going to be on. At least the first session. The second session, I believe it's actually a workshop. Oh, this one. So this is we don't have the word GitOps as part of the title, so maybe we should have had that. So and folks that are, I'm sure a lot of folks would have heard about this term called GitOps. It's I believe it's a framework of where you use Git as the source for your infrastructure automation and as well as your application code deployment, right? So it's almost like taking DevOps. It's DevOps for infrastructure automation is how I would call GitOps, right? And as part of this workshop, like we'll be covering, what are some of the best practices there in implementing GitOps in a Kubernetes environment. But the beauty here is like you have GitOps, you have EKS. Now you throw in SaaS, it adds a whole new wrinkle, right? So there is tenant onboarding, there's that aspect. Like what are some of the resources that you have to provision as part of your tenant onboarding process, and how does that sort of align as with your GitOps practices? Like there are a whole set of considerations to think about when you're implementing that. So I think the workshop is going to basically dive deep into that. I believe it also looks into Argo CD, Argo workflows as part of the workshop. So it'll be a really interesting one. So
awesome. Thank you, Ranjith. Let's jump to the next one. So we have quite a few sessions here related to SaaS architecture patterns.
Yeah.
I'll
jump in. Yeah, I'll jump in real quick and just kind of scan over these. So I'm doing the pitfalls talk again this year. It was really great talk last year.
It was
very
an
exciting.
Awesome talk.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Like you don't often get to talk to the downsides of what you do, but it was a great talk. We found some really great ways to highlight some of the mistakes that we've seen people make, or some of the things that people learned and then corrected along the way. And to share those this year, we're going to do another version of these and maybe introduce some new pitfalls that we've seen. And we're going to talk about tools and strategies in another chalk talk. And the microservices workshop has gotten a complete redo, right? So I think we're
doing ABP in that one now too.
About that. Yeah, exactly.
Amazon verify permissions.
Yeah, and if you've seen it before and we're like, oh, okay, I kind of remember. You don't. It's all new. It's going to be very cool. Let me just quickly, there's two more. We've got so many sessions. We're not even going to cover all of these. These scaling ones are really cool. I've heard a rumor that John Topper from the Scale Factory might join us on this one. So if that rumor is true, then I'm pretty excited to hear him talk. If you haven't heard him talk, he's an amazing SaaS thinker and thought leader. And also some testing ones as well. This is another one of those topics, just like operations. We never, I would have loved to have been talking about this from day one. We never quite had enough content on this. So a builder session and a chalk talk on this in new to this year is pretty amazing.
And so you get to see my ugly mug too.
Yeah, I mean, all four of us are going to be on stage for various pieces of this, along with Todd Golding, Dave Roberts, and Ujwal Buka. Lots of great SaaS people are going to be there talking about these topics. I'm excited. This is going to be a really good reInvent for talking SaaS.
So I think that brings us to the end of our list there. Bill, thank you so much for compiling all of these. I know it's been quite a bit. And Anubhav and Ranjith, thank you both for joining us here today as well. And giving your thoughts and opinions on these different sessions. For all of you that are out there, please join us at reInvent this year. It's going to be an exciting time. I think we're estimating 60,000 attendees this year. We're getting back to where we were pre-COVID. Yeah.
Any tips for people that'll be at reInvent?
Wear comfortable shoes. That is really, really important. And the Caesars Forum is not Caesar's Palace. So those are my two big ones. Anybody else?
Get on the catalog early. So a lot of these great sessions, especially the workshops, will fill up really quickly within a day or two of when the catalog goes live. So make sure you go and hop on those. And if you find some of these topics compelling, start watching for when they're going to announce that catalog. And there'll be rumors coming out a couple days before, but it'll be coming within a couple weeks. So start watching your catalog if you're registered.
And
Bill, are we doing
leverage the app? Oh, sorry.
I was just asking, I think we are doing those peer talks again this year, right? If I'm not wrong. I think those were really cool. I feel like, I got to meet some of my old customers whom I haven't chatted in a while. And it basically, the peer talk is like you can go and find someone whom you interest from your areas of interest, whom you want to chat on one-on-one setting. So I actually like that concept that was introduced last year.
Yeah, and there'll be a lot of SaaS competency partners as well at reInvent. So if you're interested in talking to a partner, reach out to me and the SaaS competency team. I'd be glad to help to arrange those meetings or discussions as well. Ranjith, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say leverage the app. So there is a really nice, reInvent app, or
much better maps this year. It looks like too.
Yeah, much better. You have the maps, and my sort of pet peeve thing is I can never find, where the pickup and the drop off of the shuttles are.
Right.
So it's always, it's a really handy thing to have. Definitely download the app for sure. So
nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here today. I hope that those of you that are joining us live have gotten some good ideas about what we're going to be talking about at reInvent this year. Maybe thought about some of the sessions that you might be interested in jumping in on as well. And of course, make sure and join us again in 2 weeks, where we will once again have a new episode of Building SaaS on AWS. And rumor has it we may have a partner on with us in our next episode as well. Until next time, thank you all for joining. Again, say hello in chat. If you haven't done so already, hit that follow button, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.